Thanks for joining us today. We're super excited to have a chance to sit down with our guest, who is an 11-time platinum, 6-time Telly, 5-time Global Music Award-winning audio engineer, composer, and multi-instrumentalist. He's also received 1 Grammy with 5 nominated albums and an Emmy. Super talented vocalist, musician, writer, member of multiple bands, including a 30-year and counting member of the Miele Ringwalds. And let's not forget his entrepreneurial drive and ownership of various studios, videography companies, and production companies over the years. A husband to his beautiful wife, Cassie, and papa to Betty Lou, their bulldog, Mr. Jack Miele.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome. Thank you.
So, where should we get started?
Well, we've been looking forward to this one.
We have.
Well, I have 2, and I appreciate you guys having me. So I don't quite know what to expect, but I'm I'm looking forward to it. And just to set the record straight, technically, I am not a Grammy winner. I have worked on records that have won Grammys. So it's this weird technicality they have. But,
Really?
Yeah. So
Well, thank
Still
you.
cool to be able to say it. Thanks for
Oh, yeah.
clarifying.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Oh
for
yeah,
the-
no, it's cool. It's so I've worked on Grammy award-winning records, and I have 6 nominations for other records that I've worked on. And the way the Grammy Society works is that when you're in what they call technical department, whether it's mix engineer, I just want somebody to make it make sense. But it's you have to have engineered 51% of the record in order to get the actual statue and to be able to use that nomenclature that you are a Grammy-winning engineer. But that same rule doesn't apply for record of the year or for song of the year or album of the year.
Yeah, so that totally doesn't make sense.
So right, that doesn't make sense. And another thing is that if, depending on the category, if you were the engineer or even the producer on a song that wins best rock performance or best American roots performance or whatever, you don't get anything. Even though they wouldn't have heard that performance without you.
Right.
That's same thing. You get a certificate saying that you worked on these records, but you don't get the statue unless you are physically 51% of that project, and it has to be for an actual recording, like best, like I worked on something that won Best Country Album.
Okay.
And but I didn't engineer 51% of the album. So I still have the platinum albums on my wall and still have the Grammy certificate saying I worked on it and everything, but it's...
Well, for what it's worth, the industry may draw all of those technicalities, but to me and Anna, you're a Grammy Award winner.
Thank you.
And you're our Grammy Award winner, by the way.
Yeah, it's still cool. It's a cool
It's
thing.
awesome.
And
It really is. And that's kind of where the question that I wanted to ask you, like when you hear an intro like that, like how does that make you feel?
it depends on what day it is. Some days it makes me feel proud. Some days it makes me feel kind of bashful.
Really?
Like meaning like, okay, it's like because you aren't what you do. You know, I mean, there's more to a person than what they do.
I agree.
You know, and we live in a culture that most people, when you meet them, one of the first questions they ask you is, "So what do you do?" And it's almost unfortunate because then, depending on what the answer is, the next reaction that you will get from that person will be determined on what your answer was.
Okay.
So but nobody ever, like in Europe, it's totally different. Nobody asks that question. They'll ask like a question like, what inspires you, or something like that, like or what are you motivated by, or what do you strive to be like, or what it's just I don't have a really great example of a question, but very rarely do people ask you what you do, and at least in my experience,
right.
And I feel like that's a very American thing.
I agree.
And I have even friends that will, when you walk into a room, the first thing they do is give the entire room your resume, and look, and sometimes that it works to your benefit. Depends on what you're there to do. If you're in a business capacity, if you're going to, let's say you're going to like the NAMM convention in Los Angeles, like you're there to network with people, and you're there to get validity and, not credit, that's the wrong word, but like
Credibility
is that's the word I'm looking for. So your resume will lend to your credibility, as to whoever you're talking to, because there it's 30 or 40,000 people all trying to do the same thing that you're doing.
Right.
So, but I do understand the trappings of that question. But to answer your question of how does it make me feel, it makes me feel proud. I love what I do. I've been doing it a long time, but it's not all I do.
And that's where I want to tap into.
Okay.
You've been doing this a long time. And when Anna asked you, how do you feel when you hear that? I think of, how old were you when you first picked up your first instrument? And if you kind of thought about yourself back then as, just interested and curious, maybe there's something genetically in you drawing you to music. And then here we go, flash forward some 30 plus years, 35 years later, 40 years maybe. And here you go with this really nice resume and some really cool things that you've had a chance to participate in and still be involved in. Did that kid back then ever think about those types of things? So maybe tell us a little bit of the story.
Absolutely. I thought I was going to be famous. I even before I played music, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. There was something in me to want to entertain, to be that person, but I really wanted to be Ace Frehley, after that. I was, and once again, Kiss, the big show band, bombastic, and there was, even from a young age, there was a very young age, 3 years old, 4 years old, there was a huge draw to music, but I never in a million years thought that I would be a musician, not in a million years. I thought that I loved music as a kid, all through grammar school and stuff like that. And but I didn't think about being in bands or in a band until I was in high school. And
so when did you? So give us a little bit about the early Jack discovering music from as early as you can remember, and what instruments were you drawn to and things like that.
So I was drawn to music as a very, very young child. I would steal all my sister's records and and play them. And before I could read, I would get upset if you'd put the records back in the wrong sleeves. I couldn't read, but I knew what the little inner part of the disc looked like, and I made an association between that and the cover, and I knew that those went together. And so back then in the 70s, my sister, they don't care. They're putting it away. No, it goes in this sleeve, and I would fix them all, and there are certain records still to this day that I listened to back then, and I can still see the covers of those records, and those records hold a very special place in my heart, and I still can remember all of those, and I don't know why, but music made a huge imprint on me as a kid. I remember for my 5th birthday party, I got this compilation record called Hit Explosion, that it was like an As Seen on TV thing. Mm-hmm. And I can still remember, I can name every song on the record in order.
Wow.
And still.
Let's go.
And it was Mickey by Tony Basil. Then it was Flock of Seagulls.
Iran.
No, the other one. Space Age Love Song. Then it was Steppin' Out by Joe Jackson. Then it was Shadows of the Night. Then it was Young Turks by Rod Stewart. Then it was, on the other side, was Abracadabra by Steve Miller Band. It was, it was Haircut 100. Boys, I can sing the song. No, it was Boy Meets Girl or something like that. But it's by Haircut 100 is the band. And then there was a Santana song, which I think was Hold On is the song. And then they had New World Man by Rush. And, it's
a good album.
Yeah, it's a great record. And it was funny was that I secretly had tried to get the Mollies to play every song on that record by suggesting, and I got close. We've played almost every song on that record. So there's maybe 3 songs or so that we never had played because they were just too obscure,
So arguably, how much older is your sister than you?
2 years, year and a half.
Was there anyone else in the household who liked music? So arguably your sister, who's 2 years older than you.
Well, my sister, I had half sisters and a half brother too, but that's a whole other story. But nobody in my family is musically inclined at all. Nobody in my family is even musically inclined to the sense of understanding deeper meanings in things. Mm-hmm. Nobody's. My mom, and my sister, as much I love her very dearly, but she's very, it's very A plus B equals C. There's not a lot of symbolism and things and
she's listening to it on the surface,
right. It's
most
surface
people.
Listening. My mom was the queen of that. She had no clue, she thought symbolism was stupid. She didn't understand it. She loved movies and TV and never, saw anything deeper in meanings of anything. And if a movie was too subjective or too deep or too introspective, I don't like that movie. It's stupid,
What's funny is hearing that, which I didn't know that about you, is, as you well know, both of you know, I love music. I can't play a lick of it. Tried earlier on, it's just not me. But I love music and I'm passionate about it in so many ways. In my house, really, my parents didn't listen to a lot of music unless it was they were having a little party or something like that. And then we would have, Nutbush playing, and Mickey was one of my mom's favorite songs. Mm-hmm. Maybe some Rick James after the cocktails started flowing. But generally speaking, there was no music present in my house. Mm-hmm. But I had an older cousin, 6 years older than me, who was kind of like my big brother. And he turned me on to music and things such as Prince, Ozzy, Motley Crue, and a wide variety of music as well. And that really kind of lit the fire for me. It wasn't from my household, and I had a younger brother. I'd have an older sibling. So same for you?
Same for me, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only remember one album we had in our house, and it was a Michael Jackson album.
Probably Thriller.
Yeah,
it was Thriller.
Yep.
And
half of the household.
My brother knew every word to every song, and we just played it over and over and over again. But that was it.
Record meant a lot to me at the time. It was funny because I clump records together. In my head, there's no Thriller without, because we got all of these records for Christmas one year. Mm-hmm. So we all would get, and so there was no Thriller without Like a Virgin from Madonna, and She's So Unusual by Cyndi Lauper, and Purple Rain. We got them all at the same time. And so we would just, me and my sister would just play these records over. We had a little record player or whatever. But like I said, but my mom she didn't care really about music until I got into it. She loved Elvis and the Beatles, and
my mom too.
But never listened to them.
Same exact thing.
Once again, as soon as things got introspective with the Beatles, as soon as things got a little trippy, she's like, yeah, they got weird. I don't like it. So she didn't like anything past 1965 or something.
And I love that vinyls have made a comeback.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
it's getting bad now. Now like cassettes are coming back, and don't get me wrong, I love it all. I have a huge vinyl collection and a very expensive vinyl rig, like with like vintage like receiver and everything that like sounds killer, and I love CDs still. Like I worked at a CD store for years, so
But I mean, nowadays cars don't even come with CD players.
They don't, and I urge everybody who listens to this, you need to buy physical product, because there's so many reasons why. Yeah. And I can't even.
Well, you'll probably feel proud of me because I bought 5 Taylor Swift vinyls. I'm like, well, I only needed 1, but she kept coming out with the different like covers and this. And I mean, it's so brilliant, but I'm like, no, I want that color and that color and that color. So I'm up to 5.
Well, the thing about the physical product is that we're entering, things are getting scary, and we're entering a place where the newest generation is gonna, there will be a time, I hope there isn't, but there probably will be a time where physical media doesn't exist. And once you do that, you get into this sort of scary, sort of dystopian kind of area where information is controlled with, everybody thinks, oh, I don't need to, I have all those records on Spotify, or I have all those books on Kindle, or I have all of those movies saved in my Fandango. I buy movies, I buy them on Prime, and I own them. It's like, you don't own them. You don't own them because you don't own the service that it's streaming from. Therefore, all it would take is for AT&T or whoever you have to cut that service, and everything you own is gone. Yep. Sure. And if I lost every Wi-Fi signal or cell service in my house, I have 1,000 Blu-rays that I can watch. Yeah. And the same thing with records. Music would not be lost at my house, or neither would movies or physical media or books or anything like that.
Well, in my home, I'm not quite to the level you are, but if the power went out, we would then lose access to all music. Mm-hmm. But in your house, you wouldn't.
Not my house. As a matter of fact, most music in my house is in physical form. Like, yes, we have, Bluetooth speakers that have all hooked up to the phone and stuff. But I mean, I have an impressive collection of physical media, and some of it's newer and some of it's older. It doesn't I'm not one of these like snobs, like, oh, you can't have a 2022 pressing of Fleetwood Mac Rumors. You have to have an original. Yes, and I can hear the difference, and there is a difference, but it doesn't necessarily mean one's better. It's just different. Right.
Is it bad that I like the newer repressed?
No, it's just it's how it's pressed. It's the grade of vinyl that it's pressed on. It's the mastering, because usually when they do new pressings, those older records were mixed and mastered for vinyl. So when you get into newer pressings of things, they remix things, even though they don't tell you they do. I'm telling you they do. They remix things to make it sound exactly like it did back in the day, but they might turn the kick drum up a little bit, or they might turn the bass up just a little bit, or they might master it to where the low end is and then what they'll do is they'll take those modern masters and modern mixes and they'll slap it on vinyl. And so it's not mixed for vinyl.
So maybe some of the authenticity of the original gets
correct.
adjusted.
If you want to hear it the way that they heard it back then, or the way that it was intended to be heard. It's like when you, do I hate when some new director's cut of a movie comes out, and it's not like how I remember it in the theater? No, I think it's great. It's just different. Long as the original version is still available. But when you start messing with history, like they did this, I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but there was a big money dispute between Sharon Osbourne and Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake, the guys that played on the first 2 Ozzy solo records. And there was a time where they did the unthinkable. What they did was they went back to the original master tapes and they stripped off Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake's bass and drum performance, and they hired session musicians, Mike Borden and I think Mike Inez, who used to be in Alice in Chains, to come in, or is in Alice in Chains now, but to come in and replay exactly what they played so that they could just pay them. And they didn't have to pay, because back in the day, in the early 80s, they must have had some sort of contract with Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley to give them percentages off of every copy sold. Well, if you take them off the record, then you don't have to pay those percentages. You just pay the studio musicians to come in the one time, do the thing, and then everything that record makes on the re-release is all Ozzy's. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when you start doing, there was a huge outrage about it, like, because now you're messing with history.
Right.
So when you start doing that, and the original version with those guys on it became unavailable, so you'd have to buy an older copy of it to find it with those guys on it. So luckily and thankfully, that atrocity was corrected, and now the version is more of a collector's item, the version that they're not on, because all new pressings are back to the way it was.
So give us real quick a layperson's definition of the difference between mixing and master.
Okay, mixing is when you're dealing with multiple tracks of something. So imagine in your head, one of those giant mixing boards with all the faders. Each one of those faders represents not an instrument, but a microphone. So just like we're sitting right here, and you might think that this interview is one thing, but it's not. It's 3 microphones. So on a mixing console, the big mixing board, there would be 3 faders. There would be yours, and mine.
Okay.
You know, even though to the layperson, they see this as one interview. So when you think of a drum set, you think of a drum set as one drum set, and the guys playing drums. But there might be 3 mics on the kick, 3 mics on the snare, 2 mics on each one of the toms, hi-hat mic, 2 overheads, maybe 1 back of kit mic over the drummer's head, 1 in the front, 2 room mics, maybe a chamber mic that gets very far away reverb that you blend in, maybe some experimental mics like trash mics. We would take mics like from the snare drum and put it through a guitar amp and distort the guitar amp and re-mic the guitar amp and feed it back in. And there's all sorts of things you use. So you might easily have, just now I did 3 on the kick, 3 on the snare, 6, 2, if you have a 5-piece kit, 2, 4, 6, another 6, that's, what was that, 12? And now you have 2 overheads. 14. 1 back of kit, 1 front of kit, 16, 2 room mics, 17, 18, 2 chamber mics, 20, and maybe 2 parallel compression mics or 2 trash mics or something like that, 22 for a 5-piece drum kit.
That's crazy.
But people think of it as one thing. So now you have 22 to 24 faders of the console as all the drum kit. Now for bass, you might plug the bass straight in what's called DI, or DI stands for direct input. So you take just the cable coming out of the bass guitar and you plug it straight into the console. Well, that gives you one good sound, but you might want an amp sound too, because you might want it to mic an amp and get a little bit of room ambience or something like that. Amps just sound different than DI. It's just the way it is. So for bass, you might take that and you might split the signal and put 1 DI and 1 to an amp. And then I've even seen people do things like put 1 DI, 1 amp, and then there'll be like bass pedals where the pedals get their own send, and so you can blend it in later. And so now you've got 2 or 3 mics for the bass. Guitar, same way. Vocals, same way. So now you're dealing with 48 channels, 48 tracks of a song. And if you put all those faders at 0, it's going to sound like a giant mess, because certain mics are supposed to be not as loud as other mics. So you need to start I don't want the room mics to be just like you're saying, do we need to turn off the AC in here? Is it too loud? Well, that would be, if you had room mics in here, they would be a lot louder. But because these mics are so directional and you have windscreens on them, probably not necessary. So if you did have room mics, you wouldn't want those room mics as loud as these mics. So you pull those down. So that is mixing right now.
So finding basically balancing all of those mics to achieve
to get it to all come out of two speakers. You know, now I know we have Atmos. We're not going to get into that.
So then what's mastering then?
So mastering is where you deal with, okay, we did this giant mix of 40 or 50 tracks, and we got it to come out of two speakers, which is called stereo left and right. One speaker here, one speaker here. Stereo left and right, or if you're looking at it this way, left and right. So now that's why they call it, some people will call the mix a stereo two mix. Two mix, two channels, left and right, okay? A mastering engineer only deals with a two mix. It only deals with stereo tracks. You're not dealing with 40 or 50 tracks. So what I do is I have now, for our record, we've done 10 tracks. We recorded them all at the same time, or maybe you didn't. That's even a better example if you didn't. Because most people record records over the course of a long period of time, depending on what it is.
And
you know,
when you say that, do you mean like drums, guitar, bass?
Well, there are different ways to do it, and some do it like that.
Okay.
We're going to do all the drums today. Now we're going to do all the bass. Now we're going to do all the guitar. Now, but then the way that I do it is I like to capture something. It would almost be like, imagine if we did this interview where you just had me talk and then you came back after the fact and you just recorded your reactions to what I was saying and then edited it together.
Got it.
You could do it. It just like reality TV does it all the time, you know,
Sure.
But it does, there's a lack of authenticity there. And we're trying to capture something here in this interview where there's a true reaction, a true push and pull with real people. And that is the way that I like to record music. I like to put people in a room. At the very least, I like to get the drums, bass, and guitar done.
Got it.
Together. If I've done records where I've done 22-piece bands, like, you know, 4 backing singers, lead vocal, 2 guitars, B3 organ, Wurlitzer, horn section, drums, acoustic piano, all sorts of stuff, all simultaneously, all to tape, one take, no overdubs. And we would, and in that situation, which is the way they used to make a lot of jazz records, you know, where you're capturing a performance where if one person makes one mistake, you got to do the whole thing again. And so everybody's got to be on their best, especially when you start dealing with things like, hey, take a solo. You know, you make one solo note mistake, you can't punch it in. And the reason why is because when you're dealing with that kind of thing, you're putting everybody in a room, things are bleeding. That's why the guitar is bleeding into the drum mics, unless you have a studio with really good isolation, which there are studios like this. But I tend to think that bleed is your friend, because, you know, why does the piano on, you know, take 5 and My Favorite Things sound so great? You know, it's like when McCoy Tyner's doing the piano solo and My Favorite Things by Coltrane, like it sounds incredible. Why? Because it's not only being mic'd by the mics, but you're hearing the sympathetic bleed of the piano into the drum mics, into the horn mics, and all of those things create dimension. They create a Z-axis inside of the music. You feel like you're physically there listening to it. And music today, a lot of it, I'm just makes me depressed. A lot of it is the only microphone that's live on the whole record is the vocal. Everything's created by DI'd instruments, maybe DI and a bass or a guitar, keyboards, samples, everything. You know, there's no real drums. It's all samples. Can you tell
the difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so can you.
Can I?
You just don't realize you can.
Probably not. Yeah.
You know, you can listen to a song, and I'm not bagging on either of these people, you know, because if I'm being completely honest, I'm a huge fan of both. I really am. But you listen to a song like Dreams by Fleetwood Mac And then you listen to a song like Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish. And Billie Eilish's recording, her and Phineas's recording of that song, the only thing that's, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know this for sure, I wasn't there,
Right.
but in listening to it, it sounds like the only thing that's live as far as a microphone is her vocal. And her vocal is so impressive on it. Like, I actually have a record of all of that entire album, just the vocals. And just the way that she builds harmony vocals is very inspiring. It reminds me of like Brian Wilson. It's very inspiring to listen to it. So it's very well written and very well done. But I seriously doubt that there is a real drummer playing it. And if there is, he's quantized. Like quantization is when you take imperfections out of something. Like if I sit here and I do this.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty consistent, but if you were to put it on a grid and physically look at where the spikes were to this, it would be off slightly. And that slight offness or that slight inconsistency is what makes something sound human. Well, quantization is where it basically looks at all of the spikes and it locks them in to perfect timing. So that when you perfectly time something, you take a lot of the human element out of it. But to get that modern sound, everything is quantized. There is no push and pull and sway and you know, like you want to talk about sway, listen to Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones. If you listen to that cowbell intro, it was boom, 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 boom. Listen to that and then sort of tap your foot and while you're listening to it, and then quickly shuttle through towards the end of the song. The end it's sped up. It must speed up 10 BPM. It's so like it just does this the whole song, and it's interesting because nobody seems to mind. And the reason why people don't seem to mind is because it feels natural. It feels like speeding up in a song feels natural. Slowing down doesn't feel natural. When you slow something down, it's a lot more apparent.
That's so true. That's so true.
It's so much more apparent when you slow down.
So basically, the technological advances, like pretty much everything, on the one hand is allowing a newer sound that's more precise, but the trade-off is that I'm going to say authenticity, and I don't know if that's the right word, but the trade-off is that the human, maybe a little error here and there, the bleed, the movement of different things, like you were saying, the difference between the clap that sounds consistent, but really when you looked at the data behind it, it is not, right? It's like everything. I mean, it's like the technology is great in so many ways in all facets of our life, but there are trade-offs for each one of those things we would identify and go, man, we really like this. And 30 years ago, we didn't have it.
Right.
If we thought about it enough, we'd say, yeah, but what's the trade-off? Yep. And on almost every one, there would be a trade-off. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. Like it's.
Yeah. I mean, and look, this is the reason why I'm as grumpy as I am. Because, you know, I've seen. I
think there's more than one reason, but go ahead.
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen brilliant drummers walk into a studio and lay down a great drum track, and I've watched engineers take that drum track and quantize it. And I'm like, why did you have that guy in here? You know, like you could have. Would
John Bonham, the drummer of Led Zeppelin, There's
a great video on this on YouTube where a guy takes Bonham and he quantizes him.
All right.
And it shows you the differences. And what's funny is that there's something interesting happened. I will acquiesce to that. Something interesting happened. It did sound quantized and a little lifeless, but it still sounded like Bonham to me. And because there are other elements other than just timing, how you hit a drum, there are certain people that have, you know, one thing that quantization isn't correcting is touch. You know, there's a certain touch to things, especially with guitar, piano, drums. These are touch instruments where, it's not like a keyboard. Like a keyboard doesn't matter how, I mean, they have touch sensitive stuff obviously, but it's not as touch sensitive. You need to use like expression pedals to make it really, ebb and flow a certain way. And that's one of the things that they're, when you do like fake strings and stuff like that, the guys that are really good at it, and I know a few, are the guys that like have like expression bars and stuff like that as they're playing. They're using expression pedals and bars to get the bowing to sound real, and you're sitting there, creating this, and it is impressive, and I love technology. I really do.
But you're also grew up at a time where the human element was more powerful than the technological element.
Yes,
right?
but I think the reason why I get so kind of down on this is because woodshedding hours, being super proficient at something, in a lot of ways has become marginalized, because, I don't need to be good. I'll just fix it. We'll fix it, and this is across platforms. It's not just music, it's movies, it's books,
right.
It's script writing. I like to watch certain like documentaries and stuff on YouTube, and a lot of it is like, indie self done. Well, I've actually gotten to the point now to where I can hear the algorithm of an AI writing, because I've done a lot of this, is a whole other conversation. I've done a lot of AI research, and I can actually hear the algorithm.
That's
and I'm listening to it going, oh God damn it. And it ruins it for me. It really does. And it's not because I don't think AI is amazing. I think AI is an incredible thing.
But part of the problem is that the general public in any of the things you just listed are not purist.
It's not about being a purist. It's about caring.
But what I mean is because they're not I'm using purist as just the word, but because they're not a purist, they don't appreciate and or can't hear the difference.
Well, it's all about
like you told Anna earlier, you do hear a difference, you just don't realize it, right?
Right. Well, there are things, and there are reasons why when you hear something, you might not understand why it's different, but this is different for some reason. And those things, the old saying, the cream rises to the top. Those things usually will prevail, or even if they don't prevail, they will become, if they go unnoticed, usually years later, something will happen, and I'm not saying in every case, but a lot of things will happen to where I'm like, wow, this is, like, for instance, a record that I heard back when you and I were in college was a record by a guy named Chris Whitley called The Din of Ecstasy. And I remember hearing it going, this is brilliant. This is a brilliant record. And it was one of these records that went completely under the radar or whatever. And I just recently was at the record store and I saw that they were repressing it on vinyl. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, thing is getting a resurgence, And I think Chris Whitley died, I think. But I'm like, this is one of those things where it found an audience. It was just ahead of its time. You could say the same thing about Jeff Buckley Grace. You could say the same thing about, the Elliott Smith record. What is it called? Either Or, I think is what it's called. But now those guys had to die for people to take notice, unfortunately. Right. And the old saying, everybody loves you when you're dead. So it's one of those things where when you die, people will seek it out and go, oh, this is amazing. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't happen when they're alive. But usually the things that are really, people will listen to it, I don't know why this is different, but it is. And that happens with movies too.
I think it happens with all of our senses. Because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, I like to cook, right? And I can I can tell, and I've also tested with people I've cooked for sometimes, and people who may not have any idea what the ingredients are in something other than obviously the protein or something like that, right? But they'll say, this is a little different than last time. Or it tastes like something's missing, right? And to me, it's that same, there's something in our senses that we sometimes can't identify because I'm saying we're not a purist, meaning just as probably 100 ways to say that. But our body is recognizing it, right? Like our senses are sensing that something is a little different.
It's funny.
Intuition, whatever it might be.
One of my favorite feelings, and it happens sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, but one of my favorite feelings is when I hear or see or read something and I don't know, it happens more with music and movies for me, but I don't know why. I really don't like it, but I can't stop listening to it. And I don't know why. And it's a fascinating thing. It's like, it's almost as if I'm drawn to it in a way. Like I remember listening to like John Coltrane's The Love Supreme. And I even remember listening to Pet Sounds the very first time I ever heard it by the Beach Boys. Same thing. I was like, I don't really like this. I liked Wouldn't It Be Nice and Got On It, but like all the other songs, I thought they were just kind of mid and I didn't really get it, but I couldn't stop listening to it. And then I realized it was genius. It was brilliant songwriting. And it was just, I hadn't caught up with it mentally. And same thing with Coltrane. I listened to Love Supreme. That's, especially if you don't understand or like jazz, that's a hard record to go in first, you know. And I listened to it going, I don't understand this. It's such a strange record. It's a jazz record that opens with a gong, you know. But it's such a strange record, and I didn't understand it. But there was something transcendental about it, where I was like almost transported to another place listening to it, almost like in a meditative state, and which is exactly what he was trying to do. And I love the record now. I can hear the whole record in my head now. And it's, like I said, it's not a record with any sort of discernible, like well, that's not true. There are some takeaway melodies, you know, but it's not like the kind of, you know, right, melody you're snapping your finger to, like just hanging out at the house. Yeah,
I've personally really struggled with Coltrane. I have been attracted and go back to it. Same with Miles Davis, but it is way beyond my. But there is some reason that every so often I put it on and then I listen to it and I'm like, I can't get to the point where I'm enjoying it, but I am. This is funny you said it. I am going back to it for some reason. Why? I don't know.
And that's
because I'm like, I already know I don't like this, but then I put it back on and I'm like, maybe it's partially for me because I'm such a fan of music and I know that those two in particular are like, you know, icons, right? I'm like, why is it that I don't like this? All right, so I want to shift gears.
Movies are the same way. By the way, I have, you know, before we leave, I call it my Jazz Gateway playlist, and I'll share it with you. It's like, so it's easily digestible, but it's all the greats, you know, and so it's like, okay, put it on while you're cooking or something and listen to it. But like every song on it became like a standard, you know, like, but.
I want to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
I want to go back a little bit again because I'm very curious about this. So talk to us about the first band. What was the name of it? The first band you were in your teens, I'm guessing, right?
I would have probably been
the one that you recall the most, you know.
Yeah, my first real band was a band called Southern Rage, and I was 14 or 15, and but we were a band that we were a band that made money, like right off the bat. We were terrible, you know.
But at 14,
I mean, I remember we played CYO dances, we played school fairs, we played when the lottery had gotten put into Louisiana. There were like all these like celebrations all over the place or whatever, and like Exxon had run this whole thing where they were having bands out in front of the Exxon stations. And we played like 2 or 3 Exxon stations. Like we played, you know, like we just played all these different places. We didn't, it was funny was that we even had played like a political rally for like the super right, because they heard Southern Rage and they thought that we must be some sort of like political act or something. I was like, we didn't care anything about that. We were just kids that just wanted a gig. We just thought it sounded cool, because we were just angry young kids like, oh, this just sounds cool. Like it sounds angry and whatever. Right. And so we went, we did those and
mostly covers, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But then that band pivoted. There was a few iterations of that band, and then it pivoted into almost all original. So after about 2 years, I think, of doing covers and playing gigs and getting paid, and we went and we pivoted. We started doing originals, and then we started getting into the club scene where we started doing, the Abstract Cafe and Muddy Waters and all these old places back in the day, the old like metal punk scene or whatever. We weren't a punk band, but we would play anywhere. And then after that, that band had sort of broken up, and at that point I was like completely original. Like I didn't have really any interest. I mean, we did certain covers or whatever, but I didn't really have any interest in being in a cover band. And then I went to a band called Ritual Groove, which I formed in like 1993. And that band lasted till about 96 or 97. Probably around 96, I got kicked out of the band. And
out of the band you formed?
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, it happens. It's another one of those hard life lessons. It's one of the worst days of my life. Oh. But it put me on I didn't expect to get into this today, but I think honestly I would be on a completely different trajectory if that wouldn't have happened. Like meaning like there's the hell hath no wrath quote, I wasn't a woman scorned, but I was certainly a musician scorned. Mm-hmm. And I was so determined to like prove them wrong that like it set me on this journey of like, I'm going to make it without you. Because that band had actually gotten some good traction, and we had a fan base. We would be pulling 200, 300, 400 people a gig, playing all originals. Wow. So and it was impressive, I have to say. And it was the kind of thing where I was 17 years old, 18 years old, and I was like, yep, right where I'm supposed to be. I'm gonna be famous. Like the band's doing great. The people love the band. We had a thing. And then once the band started to get attention from some industry people, that is when things pair that with inner fighting amongst the members, and you get a bad recipe because I certainly at that point didn't have the look. I was very overweight and all this type of stuff. So like when the industry people saw us, they were just like, it was a time where the way a band looked was a big deal. So it's sort of that experience sort of put what I called a chip on your shoulder. Oh, absolutely. Believe me, I had many chips on my shoulder. Yeah. And I talked to my girls about that. And for me too, through my life, I can still remember 2 of the conversations. I know who I had them with. I know where I was when I had those conversations, where someone said something to me that I interpreted. It was much more significant to me than it was to them. It was just a conversation to them, and they were probably just giving me some shit, right? But for whatever reason, wherever I was mentally that day or where I was in my life, it didn't feel that way to me. And it created another chip on my shoulder that was like, oh, okay, I'm going to log that one back here. And now I'm going to show you, may take me a while, but one day I'm going to show you that you were wrong, right? And I think those chips are good, that when you can take an event in your life or maybe a conversation or something that is maybe it's an insult or maybe it's a real troubling event, or kind of what you're saying, you started a band and then all of a sudden you're exiting it, that event can go one way or the other. Right. For some people, they get it and it just sends them down just this path of
just misery. I'm not good enough. And for others who have good villages of people around them and support can maybe channel it the other way.
Well, look, here's a couple things to touch on with that. The problem, I don't say the problem, there has to be a resolution, because yes, there were many things that created chips. And that was probably my first, real dealings with like the music industry. Just because you're a career musician doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the music industry. Like I know people who are career musicians that play on Bourbon Street and, they play 5 nights, but they're not in the music industry.
Right.
They're more in the club industry, if anything. So, but once you get into the music industry where you're dealing with the way things work, that was probably my first dealings with that, because what it did was an industry person was allowed to come in and dictate how we are going to run our business. Right. Or not dictate, but suggest how we should run our business. And the band, being as hungry as they were, took that.
Right.
And so I digress back to what you were saying. I had that chip for a long time, and you have to be able to. You'll carry anger like a bag on your hip. You have to be able to let go at some point and allow yourself to be okay. Because I know people that have that chip and they still have it, and it will drag you down. Because it's just like a crevasse, that you will fall into, and it's very difficult to climb your way out of. And you need to do it without any sort of, you need to climb out with any sort of expectation of reward. The reward is letting go.
Right.
And
did anyone help you get over that?
No.
It was just living life and just kind of knowing you had to let it go.
Probably things happen that make you realize people dying. Maybe I didn't, but maybe a person becomes ill or gets sick, or watching someone else who isn't dead but they're destroying themselves. When you witness other things that bring you to the realization that this is not the way. If you still have that chip, when you do get success, the chip gets bigger. It tends to get bigger. At least it did for me. What would happen is that I had this chip, and then I ended up losing a whole bunch of weight. And I think I lost 175 pounds.
Wow.
And so I lost a bunch of weight. I got a bunch of girlfriends. I treated them all like shit. And
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No,
but now, I'm following what you're saying, and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. And the bigger chip.
And if I'm being honest, I don't know if this is against protocol or not. If you can edit it out, but you were there. You were there back in those days.
I remember a little bit.
I had an attitude, and I thought my shit didn't stink. And at the time, I needed that. I needed that to keep the motivation to have nothing but to keep going. And people ask me all the time, what's the biggest piece of advice you ever give anybody? It's like, I always say the same thing. Always bet on yourself.
We can scratch that question off.
It's like, you always bet on yourself.
Right.
I always did, because I had enough confidence to do so, because I knew that I try to operate from a place of, you want to take this from me? Fine, take it. You want to do this? I don't care. Take it. I know that I'll rebuild it. Right. I'll rebuild it better, and I'll come back stronger. And you're not phasing me, So, and it could be anything. You want to take this money from me, this job, this girl, this whatever. I'll whatever. It's like, but as you get older, you start to become a little more introspective, and I still bet on myself, but it's not with as much arrogance or with as much disdain, contempt. as I used to, because you tend to. It took me 3 years to get thin, of which I am not anymore. But it took me 3 years to get thin, but it took me probably 10 years to get thin mentally. Okay. Because you still think like a fat person. When somebody says something, like it could be anything. I'm a big dude. Even at my thinnest, and I was like emaciated. Even at my thinnest, I was 178 pounds. Mm-hmm. So like you're walking in a store and like somebody says, "What's up, big man?" or something like that. And you go, "What do you mean by that?" Like it's right. Like so you're right. That's what I mean. Like it took years for me to like not like let that kind of stuff bother me.
So it must have been right at the tail end of that experience and entering your next phase. Because I'm thinking about the timeline when we met.
That would have been the next band. So, there was a band in between, but it was more like a project. In '97, I had a band called Fiction that only did one record and we only did one show, but it was really supposed to be, it was like a healing process. Me and the lead singer of another band had gotten both kicked out of our bands unceremoniously at the same time. Wow. And so we decided to come together and put together a record that was kind of a healing process for us. And we put together a show, and the show was very successful. And it was funny that record, it's funny that this happened. I got a message through social media the other day. And I say the other day, like a week ago, mm-hmm. Some person saying, "Are you the guitar player for Fiction? I found this record in a thrift store,
no
and
way.
it's my favorite record, and I can't find information."
That is crazy.
And
crazy in an amazing way.
She had a TikTok video about it and everything, saying like, "Does anybody know anything about this band?" Like she knew all the songs and she said, "You're the only name I can find anywhere."
Wow.
And she said, "If you're not the right Jack Miele, then please forget this message. Excuse this message." I said, "No, that's me." I said, "I can't believe you found." She lived somewhere in Texas, and we never sold that record nationally. It was only locally. So I don't know how she found it, but
wow, that's
so
cool.
now I'm going to ask you a different question, right? When Anna asked you earlier about how does it make you feel when someone reads your bio, and you're like, it depends on the day. Now that experience happens, and how does that make you feel?
It was interesting. It was interesting because I immediately texted everybody in the band and told them, and they were all like, "Wow, that's crazy!" Like, and it kind of made me feel like, well, that's cool. It's like I felt like it was so long ago. I feel like the music on that record was like long enough time went by for it to go completely out of fashion and then back in fashion again. Like, because it was it was very stylized for the time and stuff. And
do you still have access to the music? Like, is it a record that you could pull and listen to?
I think I have one copy of it.
Wow.
I think.
Okay.
And it made me feel like, man, maybe I should put this on streaming. I guess. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know who's going to listen to it.
Well, this girl in Texas did.
She already has her copy.
Right, but there could be other people like her. You can't find that record, but if the music's out there, and
I say it all the time. I mean, the stuff that we make is going to live longer than we are. Mm-hmm. So how many books, records, et cetera, do we listen to people who aren't alive anymore? So, I thought it was very flattering and cool, and
But also, I think about it from the standpoint of, and to me, it's something that's so special about music, mm-hmm. is that in probably why I would love to be a musician is because you get an opportunity to be creative and artistic in your own way. Typically, maybe there's some influence on the other business side, but generally speaking, artists want to be creative in their own way. Mm-hmm. And then you put a product out, and then what I find so fascinating is like it affects people, mm-hmm. right? And people will pick a song to play at their wedding. And people will remember a song that played at the birth of their first child. And people will remember a song for all these different reasons outside of just what we like to listen to when we're partying. There's music in everyone's life, even for people who aren't that close to music. where they're like, this is a special song to me because. And so as you were sharing that, I was like, to me, that would feel so rewarding. Like,
Same.
here you did it for a quote unquote selfish reason to try to heal from a moment with
And
someone.
I also did it because I wanted to make a better record than my former band.
That's what I mean.
Like, it was like I said, it was the motivation of like, let's get together and you and I are going to make a way better record than they'll ever make. And so that was sort of we're going to hire the best players, and that's what we did, and
But that selfish motivation, so to speak, at that moment in your life ends up coming back 20-something years later, almost 30 years later, with a random individual in Texas, bought it at a thrift store and is like, hey, this is like my favorite album. And you, through that effort, ended up touching someone that now sits there and listens to this album. It may have
they were young too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
They weren't older. And look, here's the thing. You start to cross some very strange terrain when you start to monetize creativity. And when you monetize creativity, you're essentially you're putting yourself within parameters of like, okay, I need to do this. It's like, or else nobody's going to buy it, or the record label's not going to give me money for this if I make a record of all Enya covers, or if I'm, if you're a filmmaker, it's like, we're never going to get greenlit for a project where, it's a movie about Santa Claus, but he really wants to be the Easter Bunny. Like it's whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's like, I'm just making up random craziness. But when you start to monetize creativity, it's, you get into this strange place that I kind of almost feel with cover band world. I do a lot of composing and music writing for TV shows and movies, and it's a funny thing because usually that stuff, some of it is royalty based, where like if it gets picked up, you get checks in the mail, and some of it's buyout stuff. The buyout stuff is where they just pay you once and they own it, and you have no more rights to it. The buyout stuff, you like, do you put? And I'm really asking a question. Do you put as much of your heart, soul, and mind into that because you know that you'll never own it ever again, or do you get the job done and get it done well and within an expedient amount of time? Because at that point, you're dealing, like I said, you're dealing with creativity. So another thing is that you have to, just like I say, cover band world, you have to be creative within parameters. So when I'm on stage with a cover band, are we the first person to ever play, Jesse's Girl or Don't Stop Believing or whatever? No, we're not.
For the audience, you've been in a very successful cover band playing 80s covers for how many years?
25.
25. Wow. I said 30 in the intro, so I was making you older than you are. But
as a matter of fact, I got that gig at Marks Park Avenue.
Did you really?
I did, at Jam Night. That's where they showed up that night and asked me if I wanted to be in the band. And
Marks Park Avenue. Wow, that goes way back.
I know.
My point of that digression for folks that don't know you is, as you're talking about these differences,
right?
You're participating in a lot of different types of these things in it, and you have the ability to kind of explain. Yeah.
So I always equate it to like a chef. So if somebody told Gordon Ramsay to make a chocolate cake, he didn't invent chocolate cake. Everybody's made chocolate cake, but he will make it in such a way to where it's creative within parameters. The parameters are, you have to make chocolate cake. Okay, but you can be creative within those parameters, but you can't go outside and make it vanilla cake or pineapple upside down cake or whatever. It has to be that. Don't order salmon and you give me steak, So it's the same thing with cover bands, and it's the same thing with doing music for television or whatever. Right now I'm doing music for the Food Network for HGTV, and I just finished 10. They wanted 10, not the Food Network, this was for another network, but they wanted 10 spaghetti Western style, Morricone style cues, 2 minutes apiece. Now, once you get past the good, the bad, and the ugly, like that sort of thing, after you get maybe 5 in, you're like, I don't feel anything else, so you kind of have to try and manifest the rest of this. And same thing. Now I'm doing these like light drama cues, right? And these are buyouts, so they're saying, okay, we need light drama cues, 10 of them for the Food Network. Well, what's light drama? It's this. And they gave me some examples, and it sounds kind of like Sarah Jessica Parker walking in the streets of New York City during Sex and the City or something. It's like, trying to hail a cab, like, dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 like that kind of stuff, like a lot of marimbas and so you basically like say, okay, what's the instrumentation? Acoustic guitar, marimba, xylophone, pizzicato strings, and you start there. Those are the parameters that they're liking. We like this instrumentation, so do something that's of the same vein and with these types of instruments at these types of tempos and submit those. And so that's where you have to be creative within parameters. And you can't, and what's funny was that this is recent. This just happened 2 days ago. I did one and I kind of strayed off the path. I put like some electric guitar in it. I put some different instrumentation in it that wasn't in the example that they gave me. Rejected instantly. And I was like, and I said, okay, I had a feeling. I said, let me go back. And so what I did is I went back and I just stripped out the 3 or 4 instruments that I put in that weren't in the example and left it exactly as is. Accepted.
So
approved.
Crazy.
So that's what I mean. Like, there's not a lot of imagination in that. So you start to feel like, oh, this is, so you have to keep motivating yourself by going, I can be creative, but you have to be creative with these 52 cards.
Right.
So how do you, and how to the extent you can speak for the others, when you're in a cover band like the Molly Ringwalds, for as long as you've been, how do you maintain, I don't know if it's the interest, but like, how do you maintain this creativity within those sets that you all are doing? And
well, I try to. That's an interesting question. The creativity within the sets. I mean, I try not to. There are certain songs like where like the guitar solo is iconic. You have to. Whether it's Sweet Child of Mine or whatever. There's certain, Don't Stop Believing. There's certain iconic guitar solos. Then there are certain songs that we do that don't even really have a guitar solo, like Rock the Casbah, But we put a long guitar solo at the end of that song, and I never play the same thing twice. And same thing with there are certain songs that, to me, the guitar solo is not quite as iconic. I'm trying to think of an example. Like maybe like Shadows of the Night or something. Like the guitar, so it's Neil Giraldo, but I mean it's just like it's kind of a strange guitar solo. That's what I play whatever I want in that.
Okay.
And I try to just, and when that moment comes up, I just try to feel and not think. That's the whole thing is to get the best results in that band. For me personally, I need to completely detach my thinking, and I need to just react. And it's almost like boxing, like where you're not really thinking about what the other guy is going to do as much as you're reacting to it's almost like instinctual, you know? So we kind of do that as a band. We kind of ungulate on stage where we're just reacting to what the other guy's doing. And that also keeps it fresh in the sense that some of the members like are pretty, there's more rigidity in their, in the way that they do things. They like to do, you know, they play the same part and they like to, it's a part. You know, almost like a stage actor, you know, like where these are the lines, this is the part, and whatever. Whereas for me personally, I like to try and make it more
like in the
liquid,
moment,
you know, and not think like sometimes it depends on how I'm feeling. If I'm not feeling good or if I'm not like my responses to the crowd will be a little more canned. They'll be a little more like prepackaged, like you know certain things to say before certain songs that you know will work, that you just say because honestly you're not that sharp that night. Yeah. But then there are certain times where you just talk to the crowd and you are emoting to them and you talk to them and you're talking from the heart and it's different and you can feel that. And so that's how you try to deal with that.
I'm glad you asked that question because I was wondering the same thing. You know, when you talk about music and you're so passionate about it, and I think like, okay, well, he's in a cover band. Like, how does he keep doing that? I mean, in 25 years is a long time, but that makes so much sense the way
it's like
you
for instance, like the solo for Purple Rain. I have no idea what I'm going to play. I have no idea how long I'm going to play. And I won't know until that night. Some nights I don't feel good, I'll play short. Some nights I'm really into it and we play long. Some nights the guitar is going behind my head. Some nights I just want to get out of there. You know, like so it just depends.
Right.
It just depends.
But it gives you enough, you have enough autonomy in the sets that allows you to tap into whatever creative need you have for the evening.
Yeah.
Based on how you're feeling.
And sometimes I will completely invent new sections of, especially if I'm singing, I'll create and invent completely new sections of the songs that weren't there. Like I remember recently we did Rebel Yell, and like after the guitar solo, I went into this like extended sort of thing, and then the drummer went into a drum solo, and then we're trading off, and then then the bassist went into a bass solo, and then we're all playing together, and then we come down to like almost a pin drop where it's just like the bass sing dun, 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 and then I sing the bridge section. There's no, that's White Wedding, but whatever, the bridge section after the guitar solo where it breaks down, then we'll go into that. But there was this whole 2-minute thing that we just invented on the spot.
That's awesome.
And then it comes down to nothing. And that playing back and forth is what, like you could see the band almost mentally connected, like a hive mind. And those are the moments I live for. Because I feel like there's real musicianship to be able to do that. And only a band that's been together like we have for as long as we have. I know what every single member in that band is going to play before they play it almost. I can almost anticipate it the way that I can almost anticipate it, the way that a probabilistic AI model can anticipate what you're going to ask it. I mean, I'm sitting there going like, oh yeah, I can feel where he's going, and they can do the same with me. And that is the way. And once again, I'll go right back round robin, see what I did there. You as an audience member don't understand why that's different, but you know it's different. Mm-hmm. You understand that there's something happening up there that I don't see in a lot of other bands. And that's why people keep showing up. Yep. Is because there's some missing component that you can't put your finger on that's different.
That's one of the reasons why I've liked the Grateful Dead for so long, and Dead and Company with John Mayer. Yeah. Is that when I've had a chance to see them live, it's always different. Mm-hmm. It's similar enough
it's designed to be different
for me to recognize it, and it's different enough for me not to be bored. And I find that very unique with them, and that you can see that synergy amongst the band.
But it has to be balanced, and the Mollies have enough balance between the songs. Like you'll get into trouble sometimes, like the Black Crowes got in trouble with this. The Black Crowes were a band that were always song-based. They were like the modern-day Rolling Stones, a lot of songs. But then they went through this really peculiar period of their growth where they became very jam bandy. Like they would do like a song, like the song Nonfiction. I watched them do that song for like 20 minutes. And the people who grew up listening to this band as a song band, and then they all of a sudden went into this sort of jam band world, it wasn't the same audience. And so you get in trouble. We have to be careful with the same thing. The people who are coming to see us fundamentally are coming to see an 80s show. So if we get into too much jamming, too much stuff, it becomes lost on people. You have to do that, just like I said, it's like salt. You oversalt something, you ruin it. But if there's enough surprises and enough little stuff in there, you have to make sure that what you're doing isn't too musically self-indulgent.
Right. That makes sense.
So I want to, so we don't run out of time, I want to touch on something else. One of the things that I've always liked about you is you've always been very entrepreneurial and very creative, obviously. And so in these other areas of your professional career, you've kind of been able to go down the entrepreneurial path and the creativity path. So if you could touch for a second with us, you've had a couple of studios over the years. You were involved with the Fudge Studio.
I was.
And have a production company now. So just give us a little bit of a flavor of what that's been like for you.
What's interesting is I guess if I was gifted anything from my DNA, I guess it's that, because I certainly wasn't gifted, a great metabolism, or anything like that, but everybody in my entire family lineage, except for my mom, was an entrepreneur. They were I don't know about entrepreneur. They were business owners. There's a difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Very different.
It's a complete different thing. So to quote the old cartoon, like a business owner is somebody who stands on a corner and sells watermelons. An entrepreneur is a person who takes the same watermelons and grinds them up and makes watermelon juice out of it, cans it, and then charges $6 for one can of watermelon juice, where the watermelon itself only cost them 6 cents. So that's the difference between those two. And so I come from a long line of business owners. My ancestors came here from Italy, from Sicily, Ustica. And the first thing my great grandfather did was open a barber shop, and then had my grandmother. My grandmother married my grandfather, he was an electrician and a TV radio repairman, opened up a TV radio repair shop. And then they had my mom. She was the first college graduate in all of my lineage. My mom married my dad. He was a entrepreneur too, in insurance. He had his own insurance business and stuff like that. So I say not an entrepreneur, business owner. But then it was funny was that my mom, the college graduate, was the one who probably was, I don't want to say least successful, but the least monetarily successful out of all of them, because she was a public school teacher, and I don't know where I got this idea from, because I was raised in a house where you go to school, you go to college, you get a degree. And that nail was hammered into my brain from the time I was 5 years old. My mom, I didn't have the option. I was forced to go to college, so you can go to college for whatever you want, but you got to get a degree. So what did I go for? Jazz performance, Now what do you do with a jazz performance degree? Nothing, So I basically had to learn quickly how to make money in the music industry and I started out as a player, but then what ended up happening was playing gigs just wasn't enough. And I started to figure out like, oh, I think I might want to, and all of this, look, it was an accident. It really was. Like making records was an accident. I just made records because I just wanted to be able to record my own record. And what ended up happening was I got good at it and money started coming in. And when you grow up without money and money starts to come in, you're going, hey, this is all right. And then you start to do it more and more and more. And then you learn as you go along. I went to the school of hard knocks, so where I learned business as I went along. Now I've owned 4 or 5 studios over the years. I've owned a videography company. I don't do that anymore. I can't talk too much about it, but now I'm the founder of a new tech startup company that is going to be coming out along with my wife, Cassie. And it's AI based. And that's about all I can say about it. But
we'll get you back to talk about it.
What's that?
We'll get you back on to talk about it.
Both of them.
That'd be great.
Yeah, the two of
and
them.
it's going to be, let's put it like this, it's going to be pretty revolutionary if everything goes the way I think it's going to go. Anyway, so there's that. And so once again, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I figure it out as I go along. I get an idea, and once I know I have a good idea, you put in the hours and you figure out how to do it. And I always had kind of the penchant to leap without looking. So that's another thing. When I say always bet on yourself, that's that idea of leaping without looking. Like there was no backup plan. Right. There was no fallback. Success was the only answer. And so even if you're not successful, that's another thing, is that success has got many, many layers and many grades of success.
Peel that back for us a little bit.
Well, what I mean, like, all right, so I grew up with the idea that to become a successful musician or a successful artist or a successful creative, that you had to be Bruce Springsteen or the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or Steven Spielberg or Stephen King or Pablo Picasso. Right. Like there was no in between. There was only, it was a toggle switch. It was on or off, But then I started to realize that there were layers, and meaning like I know a bunch of musicians and business owners, meaning like they own their own band or whatever. These guys make well into 6 figures a year. Doing 150 gigs a year, whatever, something like that. And they go, some of them are in wedding bands. Some of them are in wedding bands, and those weddings, I mean, think about what you pay for a band for a wedding, 10 grand, 15 grand, whatever it is. And, they pay off the musicians, and if they own the band, they get the lion's share of that. And they, I know plenty of people that do this.
But don't you think that's a generic problem where we've sort of landed right now in our society where, and I love that description, it's a toggle switch, that there's been this almost like a brainwashing, which is, the only way to be successful is to, have the 25,000 square foot house, 3 Range Rovers, and be living, this billionaire lifestyle. And anything less than that, the switch is off. You're not as successful as what we see on Instagram and Facebook and this stuff, right? And
you just nailed it. It's because we have equated success with wealth,
and popularity,
and fame,
right?
And that's another thing, is that everybody thinks that you hear this all the time, like know your worth, and know how much money you're worth, and like if you work at a job, like making a wage, then know what you're worth. It's like, well, that's the thing. Most people aren't truly honest with themselves. They're not. It's like, okay, if you really want to dig into your worth, do you have a college degree? Did you show up on time every time? Does my business do better when you're here as opposed to when you're not here? Also, there's the metrics of it. If the business only makes X amount of money. I can't justify paying you X amount of money if it, there's,
Right.
so there's,
I call it unique. I actually stole this from one of my business partners over the years. Unique value. What unique value do you bring
Right, that's what
to
I'm
the
saying.
business? Which is another way of describing that is what you just did, right? It's
what is there something that happens when you're here that doesn't happen when you're not?
or that I can't get 14 other people to come do, right? And I always think about it in the opening of a business at 7 a.m. Well, there's lots of people who are capable of opening the doors at 7 and turning the lights on, but now we're going to get down to, but what's the uniqueness about the person who's been able to do it for 15 years? And they also make sure that, things are in order before everyone gets there, and they're answering the phone, and they're adding all this uniqueness to just a generic, very simple task. Right.
I would manage bands. I don't do this anymore, but I would help bands and manage and whatever. And I would always equate this to personal stock. Like, know where you are a stock, and understand where your stock is in reference to that project. Meaning, when you come into a band, we'll just use bands. When you come into a band, are you always on time? Does the crowd tend to gravitate towards you when you're on stage? Do you sing? Are you so like, let's say that you're not the greatest guitar player, but you write great songs, so that's what I mean by personal stock. It's like, it's gotta be like the kind of thing where you are honest with yourself enough to know that okay, when I come into this band, I look the coolest. More and more people ask me for autographs. I write the best songs. I'm the best guitar player. I'm whatever. That's what I mean by personal life. You come in and you just do the bare minimum, and you just do then your stock is not going to go up. You're basically a coattail rider, or
you just say it, but the facts don't support it.
Correct.
Which is, you just ran down a series of metrics that you could measure against what someone says they are doing.
Exactly. That's what I mean by when people say know your worth. They always go to the gratuitous end. They always go, I'm worth so much more because I'm this, but they never talk about the bottom end. They never talk about the things that are taking away from their worth. Maybe you have all those things, but I can't stand to be in a room with you for 12 hours. There's that too. So there are all these things that, and look, and I've learned this the hard way too. I've had projects where I have been a producer on a project, and I'm a good producer, and I'm somebody who is very good at what I do, but I was going through some things in my life, and I was in a bad mood, and so I wasn't worth what they were paying because they couldn't stand to be in a room with me. So I got dismissed from the project, and I learned from that. And so it's the same thing. So bet on yourself, but also know your worth, and so don't overplay your hand. If you, and I see it a lot of times. I see it a lot of times where people will overplay their hand because they think they're worth more than they are.
Well, it's human nature to think we're all perhaps special and better than we really are.
But the old saying, if everybody's a billionaire, nobody is.
Right.
So listen, it ain't for everybody. That's why a Maserati has 2 seats and a minivan has 9.
And that is a great place to almost wrap this up. But we're going to wrap up with a question Anna's going to ask. And
I gotta make sure I word it right. Well, okay, I can figure it out. So, if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin.
There you go.
Where would you go?
I'd let him choose.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I know you're busy, and we appreciate you coming. This has been awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Look forward to having you more often, and maybe you and Cassie coming and talking about this new venture.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Jai.
Thank you, Chris.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
All right, thank you.